All right. Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. I'm actually just going to turn it right over to our VPMs. They have been working diligently on this workshop for you all to share some of their tips and everything as you're planning for your new member process and membership education process going into next year. A couple of hot takes in there because we love a hot take in membership land. So passing it back over to Marin, Tyler, and Michaela to get us started here. Also, does somebody else want to share their screen? I'm glad to do that for y'all.
That's fine with me if you share it. Okay, hey. So welcome to Candidate Campground. Leslie gave a great introduction on kind of what we're going to be talking about today. So we're going to be going through kind of how to plan for your MEP, how to plan using Overture to your advantage within your MEP, and some of our own personal experiences from being VPMs ourselves. So I'm Marin. I use she, her pronouns. I'm from the Alpha Omega chapter at Florida State University, and I'm the Southeast District Vice President of Membership.
Hello, I'm Tyler Nardi. I use he, him pronouns. I'm from the Delta Omicron chapter at Pennsylvania Western University at Clarion, and I am the Northeast District Vice President for Membership.
Hi everyone, I'm Michaela Fector. My pronouns are she, her. I am from the Theta Mu chapter at the University of Nebraska at Kearney, and I am the Midwest District Vice President of Membership.
Next slide. Siobhan. There we go. Okay, so some things that we're going to be talking about today. What is your vision for the membership education process? Some lay of the land, things that you should be looking out for when you go through Overture for the first time, how to make Overture work for your chapter, and then enhancements as you prep. So ways that you can enhance your process as you enhance your knowledge as you prepare for this, and tips and resources for success. So first thing is let's we have some questions about what your vision is from the membership education process. So chapter growth goals and then some central questions for the MEP itself. So in terms of growth, what do you want to see happen and grow within your own chapter? What does the chapter want to see grow? And to find out the answer to this question, you may need to ask around, maybe send out a Google spreadsheet, not spreadsheet, Google form to kind of figure out what other people want to see. And then how do you plan on achieving this? So does anyone have any things that they want to see happen and grow within their own chapter? Feel free to drop it in the chat or say out loud. Or some general things that they kind of want to do with their position throughout this year.
I can go.
Okay,
Go
yes,
ahead.
Adana.
One thing that I want to see throughout my chapter is an easier new member transition. So a lot of times, like when new members enter into the chapter, they're kind of confused on what their roles and responsibilities are. So I just want it to be an easier transition, or even understanding like how like we do run the chapter, and which like how we run our meetings and stuff like that. So that's one thing that I do want to see within my chapter.
Yeah, for sure. That's something that we talk about in my chapter all the time. How do you aid in that transition from being a candidate to being a sister? I liked what Belle said in the comments too, with more diversity with ensembles and instruments and stuff. And Murph, I want to see people actually learn, retain, and value what is taught throughout the process. I really like that. And we're going to be talking about ways to actually learn and retain information throughout Overture in this session. Awesome. Okay. Next, we have central questions in the MEP. All of these questions are things that you may not explicitly answer in your MEP, but the answers to them are going to determine how you structure your membership education process. So, what do you want the membership candidates to learn about TBS, chapter members themselves, band, service, etc., after finishing the membership process? So, what do you want them to know? How do you want them to feel about all of these different topics? How will you prepare them for active membership throughout your membership process? Just like what Savannah was saying, how are you planning to do that? And how will you showcase your chapter's identity and values of Tau Beta Sigma throughout? So, does anyone have any answers to some of these questions? Pick a favorite.
I have a hot take on this one. I feel that your membership candidates, when they finish their process, should know how to do some of the essential tasks in your chapter, right? There are going to be some like specific operations that, you know, they may not have exposure to based on when their membership class happens, but like they should know how to plan an event. They should know how to host and plan a fundraiser. They should know how to, you know, ideate and execute some service for your band, and also some of the other like parliamentary procedure and run meetings and such, because we see it often that there are some chapters where they bring in a new class and they're also graduating quite a few older members. And so you've got to have some type of carryover information as you're bringing in new people and they're going into active. So your membership class should be almost like a mini chapter within your chapter, the way that they're operating and working together. Hot take with Siobhan.
One of my hot takes in a similar way is incorporate things that active sisters have to do into the membership education process. So have them complete service, have them complete things alongside your active sisters as well. That'll help prepare them for time as an active sister. Throughout our process, we invite MCs to participate in service. We do, so they get to see a little bit of more how we function. Yeah, exactly. Love that. Maybe one more before we move on in the chat or something. Michaela, Tyler, y'all got hot takes on this?
Not really.
Okay,
I,
so
I was like, I have hot takes, but not on this.
exactly. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and move on to our next section.
So for our next topic, we're going to be talking about Overture Lay of the Land. This is information before Module 0 that you should look at and take into consideration, as well as parts of each of the Overture module that will help you throughout your education process. So first, hot overview topics to review. First, you want to look at your scheduling suggestions. These are guidance on how many modules per week that you should do per the number of weeks of your MEP, weeks off, timing requirements, reaching out to possible attendees. So take this time that you have this summer, or when, like, take the time to sit down and really look into Overture and schedule out everything so that you and your attendees have enough time to get information and get everything learned before you bring in your new class to your classes. As well, reflections. These assess how your candidates are progressing, should be completed alone, and in whatever format you decide. So these could be in discussion-based, or they could be in little activities that they're doing by themselves, or worksheets. That way they are reflecting on what they are learning, and it's reinforcing those modules that you are teaching them every week. Fundraisers, which are recommended, suggestions for what to use the money for, as well as recommended people to assist in the creation and execution. So allow your MCs to work alongside your treasurer, or work alongside whoever does your fundraising, to plan and execute a fundraiser that could be used for, say, their service project that they're going to use, or for something for general chapter funds. That way they understand how a fundraiser is planned and how it works within your chapter, so that when they become active, there's not that disconnect. Interviews, which are optional, they're guidelines for interviews, alternatives for them, and recommended questions for the candidates to ask. Use these a lot in your recruitment process. It allows you to get to know the prospective members, as well as it allows you to for them to get to know the chapter. And you can even use them within the modules. It allows them to ask actives or ask you questions that you have not thought of. You have probates and candidate presentations, which are also optional. The history of these presentations, the link to policies on presentation and probate shows, and reminders on when to schedule rehearsals are all within the Overture manual. I have not done a probate or candidate presentation, but if you are planning on doing one, the guidelines are all written into Overture for you to look at, so that you don't end up with something that you're not supposed to be doing. As well as TBS study sessions, which are also optional. People involved in the study sessions, you want to plan those out, as well as the guidelines for scheduling and these sessions, so that people are coming in and actually doing what they need to be doing. There's also, written in before module 0, you have choice boards that allow the MCs to choose what's going to happen. There is service projects, which are also recommended, and quizzes, which are not recommended, but we'll be talking about those later on. Next. So module structure, the planning help. So a lot of these things within each module is there to help you to plan out how the module will go. There's the learning objectives, which are the main points that are going to be talked about in each lesson. When your MCs leave the room, they should be able to do what the objective is, whether it's the 8 and 5, whether it's, our first purpose, the second purpose, any of those, they should be able to know those when they leave the room. You also have summary of information, list of each lesson, as well as the amount of time. This will assist the time management portion of lesson planning. So some lessons, I think it's module 0 is 90 minutes in total. Take the full 90 minutes to allow the MCs to understand it, but also plan for the full 90 minutes and then some. That way you're not hitting, say you plan for an hour and you're trying to rush in all that information in an hour. Plan for the full allotted time and then some, so that you have that time to back up on, as well as the MCs have the time to learn the information. There's also recommended attendees. Remember, you are not alone in teaching all of this content. Call on friends for help, especially the recommended attendees that the committee has suggested. This will help you in every way possible in your lessons. There's the parliamentary procedures that you have to teach. Yes, exactly what Siobhan said. But bring in those people to help you in your lessons, so that you are not trying to teach everything yourself, and you have them to back you up and also teach people the chapter, like how the chapter does it. So parliamentary procedures, you can bring in your parliamentarian or the president, whoever does it, to teach the class, so that you are not doing anything wrong, or that they are learning it the correct way. But use those attendees to your advantage. Use them. Then you have the teaching the material. So there's learning content. This is what is actually taught by you. Be creative. You can teach it how you want. However, you must include all the content. So don't go around and skipping around on the content. All of it's there for a reason. You're supposed to be using the content, but you can still use that content and make it fun. There's plays, skits, PowerPoints, lectures. I prefer plays, but that is just me being a theater major. I love them. Absolutely use those to your advantage, because the more you make it fun, the more people will tend to remember it. but there's also different learning styles. So use it to your advantage to make it fun while also adhering to people's learning styles. You can also do discussions. These are ways for you to engage the MCs on learning the content. Feel free to prompt them or set boundaries for how the discussion will work. You can ask them the questions that are listed in Overture, and this will assess how they are doing. But like the discussions are a huge base to gauge where your MCs are at. You also have activities. This will help reinforce the material. Remember, you are expected to use 2 to 3 activities per module. The membership educator gets to choose which activities to do. So use that to your advantage because those activities help a whole heck of a lot within your lessons to be able to gauge where they are at. A little discussion. How do you include active sisters' opinions and views in the discussion and activities? If anyone wants to drop it in the chat or if anyone wants to unmute and talk about it. I'll say from my chapter, how we include active sisters is what we will do. If it's a smaller class, a lot of the actives will break up in one of the classes and join teams with the other MCs and not help them, but aid them in the way of, hey, here's how to do this, or let's look over this and think, how are we going to answer it? We sit there and we help reinforce what they've learned while also making sure that they themselves understand how to answer.
So for me, when I was VPM, I would decide on the discussion or activity if active sisters were going to be participating in it, or if this was going to be something that the candidates themselves were doing. I found a lot of times that active sisters would overcloud the opinions and views sometimes of the candidates, and by setting boundaries on, and even if it was like every other activity active sisters would participate in, it allowed for them to still help to form the opinions and views of the candidates while allowing the candidates to do their own like sort of self-discovery within their own candidate class.
Something that we would do to kind of get conversation going with these discussions, because our chapter usually has smaller membership classes. Like this last time we had 6, which is pretty good for us. So when we do have actives, we have everyone pick a number between how many are in the room. So if there's, let's say, like 10 total, then we will have people pick 1 through 10, and then we'll do like a random number generator. And then whatever number it lands on, then they get the opportunity to answer the question first, and then just kind of go around like that.
I think also another way to involve sisters in opinions and views and discussions and activities is also to give them the baton and let them lead those discussion topics or let them lead the activity. Especially some of the activities may be specific to different active parts of the sorority, as in like service projects or national programs. So maybe having your folks on Vibe Liaison lead the activity on, or the discussion on national programs, to kind of give them that experience to, and that presenting to the membership candidates, but also, like Tyler said before, you're not having to do it by yourself, and those other people can come and help you to teach the content.
So next, we're going to talk about assessment and retention of the material. So there are multiple ways to do this and base it off of how their learning style is, which we will talk about in a little bit. But some of the suggestions are use those discussions. Besides a great form of learning content, it is a great way to assess each candidate's retention of the material. It makes sure that they understand it and it's fully understand the material that they learned and how to applicate it to the real world or anything else. The discussions allow you to assess, okay, they have full retention of this, but they're a little iffy on this discussion. So how am I going to go back and make sure that they have that material? How am I going to make sure that it's not iffy, they actually understand what they just learned? You can also use programs and activities, plan mock events or programs, think of ways to help your new members actively use the information that they learned. It's a great way to make sure that they can apply what they learned to the real world, as well as make sure that if you're doing a mock event, like a mock program, that they understand what the importance of that program is, what they learned, and how that program works, and how you would do it as a chapter. You can do quizzes. They are not recommended. Quizzes and tests during the membership education process do not typically lead to good retention of information, as memorized content is typically retained and then quickly forgotten when not in active use. If you do end up deciding to do quizzes, you have to use the provided quizzes in Overture. Those are linked in the Overture manual. Those have to be used. You cannot edit them. You cannot change them. Those are what's being used. An answer key is provided, but you will have to use those quizzes, but you cannot require them to be passed. You cannot use them to require people to become members. So use them at your own discretion, but we do not recommend quizzes during the MC process.
Yeah, I am a great test taker, but I don't remember anything. I was actually just trying to think of like some of the things I had to memorize as a membership candidate for my tests. And like, I'm thinking of the list of honoraries. We had to memorize the names of probably 25 honorary members of the chapter. I remember one, Mr. Brian Britt, because he was the second person on the list. And so that short-term memory is not going to help them as they're becoming an active member, right? What probably be a better thing is, how can you create an activity that you bring all the honorary members together, or interview them as a group, or have a panel or something like that, so they can actually put a face to a name and actually get to know that person, because that's going to be more valuable and something that's going to be better retained than having them do a quiz. And also quizzes can be something that's not as inclusive to people who especially have trouble taking quizzes, or have maybe a learning disability or something that keeps them as a barrier from being able to do it. So you have to be able to be flexible and inclusive to all of your membership candidates, and even your active members, especially if you're trying to use a quiz or a test to be as a benchmark for active membership, or getting a little or whatever. But there has to be another way for you to be able to get understanding of the information that they're learning outside of filling out a quiz. Hot takes, switch it on here.
We do recommend alternatives to assessments. Some of them that we're suggesting are, you could do portfolios. This allows people to make themselves more presentable with the material that they learned and apply themselves to the material. So applying it to who they are, how they represent what they learned, and just applying it to a real world scenario. You could also do role plays or demonstrations like those plays. I absolutely love the plays that we do. I would recommend the play about Wava founding TBS. That one is one of my favorites. You can also do journals, have the MCs write down their thoughts or write down what they've learned, so that you can assess how well they retain the information. You can also make sure that what they're writing pertains to the information, so that when you go back and you look at those, you are able to prove that they have retained the information and that they know what you've taught, so you don't have to go back. Essays, which are a great alternative to the discussions. You can ask them a discussion and have them write an essay for people who do not like to speak in large group discussions or even small group discussions. Use the essays as a way for them to write down their thoughts so that it doesn't get all jumbled, or they don't start to try and rush their speech while they're in a large group discussion, or those who shy away from those. You can have them answer and assess where they're at. You can also do interviews. It's another form of discussion based. You can ask them discussion questions and see how they answer and understand the material. But if you decide to do that, try to do them one-on-one. That way you can assess each individual member rather than the whole group. You can also do self or peer evaluations. That way you can have people assess each other so that they all each understand, okay, I know this, but what do you know? That way you can pop into each self or peer evaluation and see where each person is at with the material, and that way you can also understand how best to help them if one person remembered something and another person didn't remember that. You can also do real world applications. In the real world, you can apply the 8 and 5. You can apply the purposes that we've learned. It reinforces the information while also sitting there and telling them, the things that we learned through our candidacy and in our membership as TBS members. You can apply these to the real world as you move on throughout TBS.
Okay, so next we're going to be talking about making it work for your chapter. And in this section, we're going to talk about adapting based on the different learning styles, adapting based on the different class sizes, and then we're going to give some how to teach it suggestions. First, we're going to look at our adapting based on the different learning styles. So in general, ask. It's important for you to get a general consensus on what type of learning style your group has. This way, you'll know exactly what helps your group work best, and then you can tailor that to your lessons. So visual, this is for your visual learners, and we have some tips. So highlight important parts in color. So if there are sections with lots of big words on them, focus on those keywords so they can kind of get a general idea of what it's on instead of getting confused by all the words. And then draw pictures. So if you have make posters or like cute little doodles of the 8s and 5s, this way it helps them kind of put the words to images if that helps them. And then when you're watching videos, there are plenty of videos. Overture provides videos of like people singing and things like that. And then when you're learning the songs, have the words on the screen so that way they can follow along, and it helps with memorization, things like that too. Then for our auditory learners, have conversations. So when you're done reading, after you read one of the slides, talk with the group or have them share their thoughts with each other. This gets them to kind of hear their things instead of just staring at words, kind of helps audiate these things. And then when you are reading, read things aloud. And another thing you can do is also have them popcorn read. So instead of just you talking at them the whole time, you can have each person in the room read if they want to, and it kind of helps them put that more to their brains as well. And then don't be afraid to use music. So create songs with material. Like with the Greek alphabet, a lot of us memorized the Greek alphabet because of the songs. so use tools like that. And like Siobhan said, music is our common tie. So finding ways to put all these words and facts into songs could really help some people. Then for our more active kinesthetic learners, like we talked about a little bit ago, using role play, like Tyler's favorite, the Wave of Veins one, so good. There are so many other options you can do with this, with like history and things like that. You can also create worksheets. So if like some people like to fill in the blank on the slides, so you can go ahead and like create a worksheet with all of the main points on it, and then fill in the blanks of the for things on the slides. They kind of follow along. Do the activities. Overture provides plenty of activities. I know it can be tempting to skip those, especially if you're doing like a class after marching band and you're tired and you haven't ate yet and you have a whole bunch of homework and all of this. Don't skip the activities because they will really help kind of relate the information to your MCs, and it's fun. So, and then also be creative. There are so many ways that you can help people learn things in more ways than just reading at them. Meet with your committees, meet with your chapter, find ways that they learn best, and like do research, all these things, get creative. And then for reading and writing, this is where you can give the members access to the materials for them to reference. So you can give them the MC workbook to use, which is found on the Overture Hub page, or you can give them MEP. And this is good so they can kind of look ahead and know what to expect through this whole process. Like we talked about, like we're going to talk about this later, but there's different areas in the MEP, like campus resources, things like that. So just giving them that could be so much more beneficial too. So after I've kind of read through these and talked about them, what are some ideas that you have to adapt for different learning styles? Feel free to comment in the chat, or you can unmute yourself, whatever you feel comfortable with.
Something that I'm thinking about as you're talking, Michaela, is that Overture already kind of adapts to a few different learning styles in each lesson, which is really nice. So being able to create a lesson that adapts to as many learning styles that you need, because realistically you could have all the learning styles in your candidate class. Being able to adapt a lesson to fit everyone's needs is going to help with the retention of material and them fully learning the material so much easier.
Good point. Any other thoughts?
I think even with the looking at the learning style for kinesthetic, sometimes for a kinesthetic learner, they're wanting to be hands-on, right? So I think they're going to find a lot of value in, okay, let's actually, like, I'm going to do the work to plan this and do the work to, execute this activity. And they're going to learn and even be able to connect the 8 or 5 or the value or the whatever the competency is to that activity, and be able to kind of absorb it. I won't say intrinsically absorb it, that big words there. And it's because I think that some of the learning material is you can't really, sometimes you can't learn like physically, like kinesthetically learn something, like, but I think even finding some type of kinesthetic connection to the 8 and 5, for some of that, it may be hard, but, being able to give them that kind of examples of what it looks like actively doing it could be helpful.
Other comments on this? Okay, so next we're going to talk about our adaptations for class sizes. So when you're looking at discussions, how often do you want people to talk? For instance, smaller classes, maybe you only have one per discussion activity. For larger classes, you may only have one discussion per class. Kind of just depends. So you may consider doing discussions with another active sister instead of the group as well. This is especially good for classes that don't feel comfortable sharing, or don't know each other, or don't feel confident, or too scared. So you can have them share with an active sister to kind of get their perspective on discussions as well. So you're getting that one-on-one connection with an active and an MC, which is great, and things like that. Activities, have your MCs work with sisters versus working with each other. Again, some classes might be larger and it might be easier for them to work with each other since they might be more comfortable with each other, or if they're smaller, pairing them with an active sister could be helpful. like it says here, some activities may be better for smaller classes or classes that know each other. And then disbursement of responsibilities. So planning requirements are a lot. So structuring these responsibilities, especially with larger classes, will help ensure everyone is doing their part and things are getting done. This kind of goes along with like service projects and things like that. So if you have a really big service or a big MC class, you can delegate this these tasks to like MC officers, and you can assign like these people, and they can kind of take the load of what they need to do and give them practice working with a group and planning these things, just like they will when they become actives and have the opportunities to be on the exec board and things like that.
Even think as you were talking, using some of the active members of your chapter to join in during some of your discussions or activities, or even, you know, dispersing the responsibilities can help with smaller classes, so that, you know, no one person is feeling alone in, you know, having to talk, or, you know, it could help to ease the awkwardness, especially if, like you said, MCs don't know each other very well, or you know, there's only a couple of them and a lot of discussion topics there.
Okay, and then lastly, I have some how to teach it suggestions. The first thing is to create your own slides. This Overture provides awesome slides, but sometimes you might want to make things that are more personable or easier for you to work with. And this will help you with knowing the content, because you'll have to look through the information that you're learning and being able to put it all down. And then you can also customize it for your membership class. Well, sorry, I just choked on my gum for a second. Okay, so when you're teaching history, this is a big one you could do is plays. Plays are super fun, role playing, all of this. And it's a great way to get your members more actively involved and kind of understand the history. And then when you're working on chapter history, don't be afraid to invite an alumni member or a charter member. Odds are those people that graduated 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, are going to know more about your chapter than someone who just joined last semester. So don't be afraid to reach out to those alumni members to gain more information on your chapter history. For module 4, this one is about learning what our Kappa Psi brothers do. So a good idea is to co-teach this with your Kappa Psi counterpart. This way you can learn some of their chapter specific history from them themselves, very firsthand information. And if your school does not have a Kappa Psi counterpart, don't be afraid to reach out to members of your district council to find connections to some that's close by, and you can do like a Zoom chat with them or something, just to get more firsthand experience. And then for module 5 and 6, invite members of your district national leadership in. Again, this is just a great way to get hands-on experience from people that are currently in the roles, and they can help build connections across the whole board within your chapter and within the sisterhood as a whole. Now, we talked about this earlier, but relate content to the real world. So obviously TBS is not forever. So how are these principles we learn in TBS relevant to our future outside of it? Not only will this be good in your classes, but it will also be good in helping people stay in the sorority, because if you're learning, oh, this is going to affect me beyond college, you'd be more likely to stay because there's more benefit to just right now. It's a lifelong commitment. And then lastly, each class is different. So changing how you teach it from semester to semester is okay with the meetings and the MEP itself. And with that, at the end, if this is like your first year being a VPM, at the end of the first semester, meet with your chapter and meet with the MCs from that class and talk about like what went wrong, what you could do better, what went well, things like that, so you can build and improve for the next one, because they're going to be different and that's okay.
So up next, we're going to be talking about enhancements as you prep for your classes, for your MEP. We're going to be talking about tips and tricks for it, what to update in your MEP, and what to look out for in the MEP itself. So first, some tips and tricks for your classes and for your MEP. Take the time to read over past MEPs and think about how to adapt it to your style. So we recommend you use the template, but in your MEP, make sure that how you're doing it is how you are going to, how you want to teach it, how you are going to teach your MCs so that it's your style, but it's how they're learning. So make sure to read that and you can adapt it to your style. Um, Make sure to review, take the time before each lesson to go over the information yourself. That way you know the material before you go into the class. As well, a great way to help review the material is to make your own slides. That way you know the material and you have them all written down. Write down your experience and thoughts for the next educator as well as for yourself. If you write down how the lesson went or how like you were feeling or how the MCs did in it, it will help you for the next lesson, the next week or the next day or when your next lesson is. That way you can improve or redirect or anything else to make sure that they are getting a full experience, and that way when they leave the process they're learning, and the next educator after you can also look over your notes and go, okay, this is what worked, this is what didn't work. That way after that they have everything down. Recap, take the time to recap what was taught in the lesson or previous lessons. It's a great way to also assess where they're at and also to make sure that when they come back into the room, they know what they learned last week. And if there were any blurry spots for them, they're able to retain or relearn what they didn't fully remember last week. And also reassess. Sometimes things do not go as planned. Create 1 to 2 backup plans just in case something falls through, if an attendee falls through, or one of the activities isn't going to work that day, or you need to pivot from a discussion because there's only a couple people there today and you have to do a makeup lesson for other people. Make sure to have backup plans. They will be a lifesaver for you.
So when you get your MEP from this past year, and if you don't have it, reach out to your district VPM. There's a few things that you should automatically know that you're going to need to update. First of all, are different policies of your university and your chapter. Your university is an ever-changing thing, and they're going to bring in new policies and new resources for you that you can use. Be sure that you update that within your MEP so you're as current on things that you can recommend to your candidates as possible. Be sure to update things that are relevant to your chapter constitution or the national constitution. And something that is really important is going through your chapter constitution and making sure that there aren't any antiquated sort of policies that your chapter still technically should be doing, because I know that I've gone through mine and we're like, we don't do that anymore. So we strike it at the next GBM. Next thing is dates, when things happen and where they're going to happen. All of that's going to 100% be different from semester to semester. So make sure that if you're the one that does your calendar or if somebody else does your calendar, that you're working with them to get the dates and the whens and wheres into your MEP. Also, any sort of overture changes. We are going to be changing little things in Overture this year, and so just making sure that you know what's going to be changed, especially if you're maybe a second year or second semester membership educator. Those are going to be really important for you to make sure that you're teaching what needs to be taught. And lastly is activities. Like we've said before, no 2 candidate classes are going to be the same. So making sure that you update the activities from what somebody else has done or to things that are going to work well for your teaching style and for your future candidates is going to be a really good thing that you need to look for.
Okay, so this is about what to look for in the MEP. So this first section is planned recruitment activities. These are the ways to show prospective members who you are as a chapter and who Tau Beta Sigma is. So make them fun and informational, and also try to make them personal to your band in your chapter. It's like, for instance, at UNK we have what we call fifth quarter, which is where percussion, like drumline, does their cadence sequence, and the rest of the band does like cute little, I forgot the word, but it's like a little dance kind of movements type of thing. So during our recruitment event, we had a music night where we talked information about like how our chapter has music things and what TBS does with music. And then we also had like a time where we played the cadence and then they were able to practice these movements and things like that so that they're better prepared for when we have football games or when we march over for parades and things like that. So make them informational, but also make them fun and personal for your chapter. Let me read Siobhan's hot take. Exactly. See, good hot take. And then next is your membership timeline and calendar. So when planning, think about the time it will take to do everything and plan for that within this section. So make sure you give yourself and the new members time to take in all of the information. So like we talked about earlier, some of these classes are going to take like 90 minutes. So make sure you have that 90-minute time scheduled out. Do not wait until the last hour or whatever the evening, because I get it, it's hard, especially if you have bigger classes. It's hard to like plan schedules with everyone, but try not to schedule some things all at once. Don't cram all of the module classes in like 5 weeks, and give people time and space things out so that they can take in the information and really enjoy the process of being an MC. Then lastly, campus resources. So take time to get to know your campus's resources and all that they have to offer you to help you and your new members. So go to your admissions office, talk to the recruitment people. Usually they have packets upon packets of all these things that your school has. Get a hold of those and find ways, include like the basic things in your MEPs so your MCs can access this. And who knows, you might find out something that you didn't know that your school had. For instance, our school has a post office, and I thought it was just a place to drop off letters. You can actually buy stamps there. And I'm graduating in December and didn't know that. So take time to learn your resources, because you might learn something.
So the last thing we're going to talk about is some tips and resources to help you succeed with Overture, including tips from our experience, tips from Overture, and various resources that you should use to your advantage. So first, some of our personal tips. It's okay to not know the answer. But I think I said this last night, it's okay to not know the answer, but it's not okay to not know where to go to find the answer. So all of these different resources that we're going to show you are great places to go to figure out the answer when you don't know it. And then make sure that you go back to the candidate the next time you see them, or in a group chat, or at the next candidate meeting, and be like, hey, I remember the answer to that question. Next is, a lot of people are going to be like, well, I want to give the same experience to my candidates that I had when I was a candidate. No, just accept right now that your class and how you teach Overture is going to be different from when you were a candidate. And that is okay. You're not the same membership educator that your membership educator was, and being able to embrace that is going to make your time as an educator a lot easier and a lot more fun. Avoid using Module 0 as a recruitment tool. You can go through various things in Module 0 during recruitment, like what to expect when you're a membership candidate, telling interested bands members that there's going to be no hazing of any kind. Those are all things that are really important. But going through Module 0 in its entirety before people are membership candidates or have been reached out to because they've received a bid is not a good idea. So be sure to do that after, so that people know the full picture of what they're accepting when they accept a bid, after they've been offered one. Next, be consistent with how you choose to teach. This is going to help membership candidates and sisters know exactly what to expect when they walk into that room. Being consistent, but also being flexible and knowing that things aren't always going to go your way. Those are ways that these people will know, okay, it is going to take 90 minutes. When Marin says that we're going to not go until like 8 p.m. at night, you know that that's not going to happen. Next, build in time for your membership candidates to get to know each other. A lot of times this is really hard with bigger classes. I had a class of 14 this past spring, and I had candidates coming up to me like, we don't know half the people in this class. So I was like, okay, well, we're gonna send you on some dates. And then I loved seeing all their pictures of them getting to know each other, from going to various places for food to other activities. Them getting to know each other was really fun. And lastly, from our experience, work smarter, not harder. We've given you a lot of tips in terms of like building your own slides for Overture. That's great, but also you don't have to do that. We already have slides that you can use. And start your MEP from the MEP from last year, because you're probably not going to change a lot of the things that are in it, but you're going to have to change some. And so starting from a base point is going to be really good. Next, from the Overture manual, some tips. Allow your membership candidates time to think. It's a lot of information, so they should take the time to think and process everything. Encourage personal connections. Like I was saying, that's really important within your candidate class and within the sisterhood itself. Utilize think, pair, share if the class is nervous to share. Like Michaela was saying earlier, not everyone really likes to share out loud. And so being able to share in a less intimidating space is going to be really good. Be specific with active members and their role in the process. This is going to help them know what to expect. Like we were talking about earlier, when they walk into the room, they know exactly what their role is when they enter the room. Be flexible. Things aren't going to go your way. Have a backup plan or 2 or 3. And be sustainable. Consider not printing individual pages for each member. We're in a time now where a lot of people have iPads or computers for their own, and being able to, hey, send out something and be like, hey, be sure that you have access to this. And whether that means they bring it in on their computer, they bring it in on their iPad, or they print it out for themselves, it's going to be really easy to be sustainable like that, and also less work for you. Next. And resources, some places to go if you don't know the answer. Your 2022-2023 chapter MEP. We're off collecting them at the moment, so if you don't have access to it, reach out to your district counselors or your district VPM about finding this and finding a good starting place for what to do as a VPM. Some people that you should go to if you need help anytime in your MEP is your district director of bands, and your sponsor. Those are great people for especially learning about campus resources and history of your chapter or your band itself. Your district VPM, we're here to help. We want to help you. We want to help see you succeed. And so we're great people to ask. I think we're mostly friendly and want to help you in any way possible. Your past VPM, they've done this before for an entire year, and so they know a lot of what you're going to be doing. And the people listed on the start of each Overture lesson, they know probably more about that content than you do. A couple of different places, the TBS website and the TBS YouTube page. There's a lot of really great gems of information in that, and it's going to be really helpful for you in figuring out answers to things or using different resources for recruitment and retention. And so a couple of things are the Overture manual. Obviously it's stocked full of information. Reading the first like 20 pages or so is very insightful, and we went over some of that today. The Overture slides is a great way to figure out how to format everything. And then lastly, school resources. You want to be sure that you kind of know what to do if a candidate needs help. And that's not something that you can provide as somebody in TBS. So yeah, those are some resources for you. And thank you. Do you have any, before we go, we've listed everyone, all of the district VPMs and their email addresses. So if you have any like very specific questions, feel free to reach out to them, as well as the TBS curriculum committee. They're also a great resource. But we have a few minutes here. So does anyone have any questions for me, Tyler, or Michaela? If not, that's completely fine. Feel free to email us if you have any questions and stuff. And yeah, thank you for coming to our campground.